Are you a responsible gun owner and you want to see a full breakdown of all the self-defense plans out there? Stay tuned. Check out this video. Hey everybody, this is attorney Andy Marcantel and Marc J. Victor with the partners from the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm. And are you ready to see how the Attorneys on Retainer program stacks up against all the other self-defense programs? We're going to break it down for you today. How's it going, Marc?
Good, man. I'm excited about this video. Our team has put together this matrix that details to the best of our ability. And look, to be fair, read the contracts yourself, right? Don't take our opinion for it. We don't know how they are going to interpret their own contracts. So this is our estimation of...
Or let alone how a court will interpret their
That's right.
contracts.
No idea how courts or these companies will interpret their own. But read the contract for yourself. Make your own decision. This is our reading and our best estimate of what each of these programs covers and doesn't cover.
And you guys can find a link to this handy-dandy chart on our website. Go check it out. But let's get right into it here. First of all, available to residences in all 50 states. Well, Attorneys on Retainer is proudly serving all 50 states. You can compare that to everybody else on our list here, USCCA, CCW Safe, US Law Shield, and FLP, and they do not service all 50 states.
Yeah, I don't know of any company that does all 50 states. And, you know, part of the problem with this is many of them are associated with insurance companies, and different states have different rules about insurance. Since we're a law firm, we're allowed to operate in all 50 states. But to be fair, we do have to be admitted pro hac vice into another state, which is pretty easy. We get a local attorney on the hook that we pay for, and then that attorney files a motion, and bam, we're appointed to handle that matter in that state. We've done this on many occasions, never had a problem.
Next up, know your law firm in advance. Well, with us, you know exactly who's going to be representing you. And actually, we have a legal conference every year that I'm excited to talk about. But rest assured, you're going to know exactly who your attorney is if you go with Attorneys on Retainer.
Yeah, that's the thing about the AOR program. If you don't like the Attorneys for Freedom, then don't sign up in AOR. But if you want the Attorneys for Freedom and you know who we are, and again, I encourage people to do their homework, you know exactly who your law firm is. That's who you're going to be talking to on the 24/7, 365 emergency hotline. Each of these other companies, you have no idea, right? I mean, what happens is many of them have their own contracted for attorneys that they will provide to you. Some of them say things like, look, you can make a recommendation for someone who you like. They'll either approve it or not approve it. So you really don't know as you sit here today at the beginning, if you're a member of any of these other companies, who's your lawyer? That seems like kind of an important issue.
Okay, next up is a really, really important one. I can't stress how important it is. It's so important, in fact, we'll mention it here. Because we're a law firm, we can cover criminal acts.
Yeah, everybody thinks that, hey, I'm a responsible firearms owner. I've been through training. I'm never going to be in a bad shoot. Okay, well, may not be the case, right? You could be in a bad shoot. There's many different reasons you could be in a bad shoot. You might just make a bad decision. You don't get to decide when these types of things happen. Maybe you were drinking, maybe it was 2 o'clock in the morning. These other companies, almost all of them say, look, if it's an illegal act, if it's a criminal act, no coverage for you. Over 95% of all criminal cases end in a conviction because somebody takes a plea. Now, that might be the right way out of a case. It's always the client's decision to decide to go to trial or not. We like to try cases, but it's not always in the client's interest to try a case. If you accept the plea with some of these other companies, sorry, you lose your benefits, which also can include those civil benefits down the road. But not with Attorneys on Retainer. We're a law firm. We can represent you even if it's determined that what you did wasn't a lawful act of self-defense, actually was a criminal act.
Right. With the many, many hundreds of gun cases that we've done over the years, suffice it to say that a lot of times people think they're making a good shoot and the state disagrees. So even those questionable areas is one where you're likely to be charged, and we still cover that. We're not looking for an exclusion because you were charged with a crime.
That's right. And a lot of people who get into clearly good shoots don't get charged, right? We've had many of those in our firm where people have shot and even killed another person, and they never got charged because it was clearly a good shoot. Okay, so look, you don't know if you're going to be in a good shoot or bad shoot, but if it's a bad shoot, if you reasonably and in good faith say, look, I acted in self-defense, will cover it, even if it ultimately turns out to be a bad shoot.
Next up, this is a pretty much universal exclusion from all of our competitors. Illegal weapons. We don't care if you have an illegal weapon. Something wrong with the serial number, you haven't checked the regulation, and it's slightly outside of the bounds of the regulatory laws.
Length of the barrel, you got one of these triggers that the ATF says, hey, this thing is now a fully automatic firearm. You have an illegal weapon, and from the best we can tell, most, if not all, of the other companies say, look, if you act with an illegal weapon, you're out, no coverage for you. Attorneys on Retainer program, no problem.
No problem at all. Next, gun-free zones or sensitive places. These things seem to be growing exponentially day by day, my friend. Places where the legislature, perhaps, your local government has decided you're not allowed to take your gun there. You can't have your firearm there. Sometimes you don't even know you're in one of these sensitive places. And if you are, well, a lot of these companies, in fact, will exclude you at that point. For us, no problem.
Yeah, since the Bruin case, it's really popular in these sort of anti-gun states to try to deem as many places as possible sensitive places and prohibit guns. Again, you don't get to decide where one of these incidents happens. What if it happens at a government building or a school or a polling place? Maybe it's a business that says no guns allowed. If you have a problem there and you pull out your firearm, you act in self-defense, you're going to be excluded with these other companies that say, sorry, you got to be at a legal place. Not a problem with AOR.
Now, say you're one of our clients that lives in a state without constitutional carry provisions, and you don't have a CCW permit as you may have been required to have by the laws in your state, and you act in self-defense using a firearm. All these other companies are going to exclude you. As far as we can tell, we say no problem.
Yeah, and to be fair, we're looking at USCCA, CCW Safe, US Law Shield, and FLP. You might say, look, would never be me. But permits expire sometimes. Sometimes you act in violation of the requirements of a permit. Maybe you just didn't have a permit. Maybe you just say, look, I'm not getting a permit.
Sometimes you travel across state lines. You're in a jurisdiction you're not familiar with. You're on a road trip with your family. There's all kinds of different laws when you start crossing state lines.
Again, no worries if you're in Attorneys on Retainer. Big worries if you're with these other companies.
Next up, as far as we can tell, this is also a universal excluder of the other ones that we're comparing against today. If you are a prohibited possessor, and there's lots of ways to become a prohibited possessor in different states, all these other companies will drop you if you're a prohibited possessor and you acted in self-defense. We will not.
I think it's fair to say lots of people come into our office because they just found out they were prohibited possessors. They went to buy a firearm, went through a background check, and came back prohibited possessor. They say, oh yeah, 20 years ago I had some little domestic violence misdemeanor in some other state far away. You're a prohibited possessor. Not a problem with Attorneys on Retainer. Big problem with these other companies. Again, if you're a prohibited possessor, you get into a self-defense problem, you're with one of these companies, no coverage for you. You are on your own. Not a problem with Attorneys on Retainer.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Mark, because a lot of people who come in to this office don't even know that they're prohibited possessors, because as it turns out, you can become a prohibited possessor not just from something like a violent felony, but certain misdemeanor crimes, certain mental health issues that if you've had in your past, even if it's an ancient thing, it can still cause you problems.
Orders of protection as well can sneak up on you. Judges check boxes that say, hey, the temporary restraining order prohibits you from having a firearm. People don't pay attention sometimes. They're prohibited possessors. And so anyways, no problem with Attorneys on Retainer.
No problem. Next up, under the influence of alcohol or drugs, there are some companies that say, sorry, if you chose to use alcohol or drugs before the self-incident occurred, even if it didn't have any effect on your judgment or recognizable effect on your judgment, even if otherwise factually you were still justified in self-defense, these companies still maintain the right to cut off your coverage at that point.
Yeah, this is, I think, a pretty rotten thing to do, right? I mean, you don't get to pick when a self-defense incident arises. You might have been out in town having a drink, something like that, and boom, you're in a situation, and even if it's a good shoot, right? I mean, these other companies are going to say, sorry, we specifically say if you're impaired by drugs or alcohol, we won't cover you. And again, not all of them. I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at the chart here. It looks like USCCA will still cover you. US Law Shield will cover you. But on this one, you're out with CCW Safe and FLP. Again, all of these are not a problem for attorneys on retainer.
Yeah, I was thinking of an even more common, more conceivable case that we've seen before in real life, which is you're at your house relaxing, maybe with your spouse, having a glass of wine with dinner, watching a movie, when somebody chooses to break into your home and you're forced to act in self-defense. These companies have the right to exclude you. And
why?
So, it's ridiculous.
Why would they exclude this? Unless they're really not trying to cover the thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating here, but we're a law firm with criminal defense lawyers who like to represent people charged with crimes. Not a problem for us.
Next up, negligent discharge. So in other words, if your self-defense incident involved your gun accidentally going off, and this can happen more often than you would think. It's actually one of the most common gun crimes that we see. Some of these other companies will exclude you. Not a problem for us.
Yeah, CCW safe, you're out. FLP looks like you are out, but not with attorneys on retainer. Again, every one of these totally covered so far.
Next, you're going to see a number of companies will exclude this one. If you're charged with a domestic violence offense during your self-protection incident, then a lot of these companies will not cover it.
Yeah, this is a big one, right? I mean, where do disputes arise? They usually arise or often arise in cases where people know each other and they have a pre-existing relationship. Think ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, former spouse, a child-parent type of a relationship. All of those are going to be considered domestic violence.
In many states, it's even a roommate,
Yes,
something
that's
like that.
true.
And clients who are charged with DV cases who come in are always so shocked to find out how broad the definition for domestic violence
That's right.
is.
It appears to us, to be fair, that the USCCA and CCW SAFE do not exclude acts of domestic violence, but U.S. Law Shield and FLP, you are out of luck if your self-defense incident occurred in the context of a domestic violence relationship.
Next up, recoupment provisions. This is where if you are eventually found guilty of a crime, and up until this point the company had been paying for your expenses, legal fees, things like that, and then you're convicted, some of these companies actually have recoupment provisions that allow them to go after you civilly for all the expenses and try to recoup their payments.
Yeah, I think this is an important one. I mean, everyone, at this stage, when you're not charged with something, if I was in a shoot, there's no way I would take a deal. Sometimes you might not feel like that, right? Clients who are looking at very serious charges, first, second-degree murder, you might get offered some really small charge, just kind of stay out of trouble. You did something wrong. You're on probation. You might want to take that to reduce your risk. But if you do, you've now pled guilty and, you have problems at that point. So no matter how your case turns out, there's nothing to recoup with attorneys on retainer. Some of these other companies have provisions. Now, whether they enact them or not, I don't know. But they at least say they have a right to say, hey, look, you pled guilty, you went to trial, you were found guilty, sorry, no coverage, we shouldn't have paid it in the first place, and now you got to pay it back. Not a concern with attorneys on retainer.
So those are the things that we've been covering for a while in our plan, but you know what? We decided we wanted to try to make the absolute best product on the market. So I'm really excited to talk about these other new additions that we have to AOR, and this is just a result of listening to people, what they would want in their ideal plan.
Yeah, we're not interested in the second best program here.
We kept our promises, and we checked all of the comments in our YouTube videos, and we saw exactly what you guys were asking for, and we're happy to say we've delivered on them. So now we cover bail bonds, and we put a certain amount aside for bail bond coverage. We also cover expert witness fees. We cover investigator fees. Next up, we have retrial coverage. Sometimes it's necessary in the justice system to have more than one trial. Have you ever heard anybody talk about a mistrial or something went wrong with the evidence, and so now we got to start from scratch? Well, it happens, and if it happens, we'll cover the entire retrial.
Yeah, to be fair, this is our first one across the board. All our companies here are covering the retrial, so no problem with that. We cover that as well. The only one interesting we have the no on in the entire first category is the recoupment provisions.
And that's one we want a no on.
That's right.
We do civil defense coverage now, right? If you're sued as a result of this, we have a great civil department here.
Yeah, let's pause on that for a second because people really are worried about being sued civilly. But remember, with these other programs out there, it all sounds great. They're providing civil defense coverage. But if you wind up taking a deal or you're found guilty, which is a high probability in the criminal justice system, just looking at the stats, right? There goes your civil liability coverage. So now you get sued and you got no protection. You are on your own. Not a problem with attorneys on retainer. I think that's a very big point. People don't sort of think about this point in advance, but it could turn out where you might be very happy to take a plea depending on what your charges are and what your plea is. But do you really want to take your plea when you lose your lawyer who's going to defend you on that what could be substantial civil lawsuit?
Yeah, it was something that was really important to you guys, and so there you have it. We've added it to the plan. Next up, scene cleanup in home or auto. Sometimes these incidents can be messy, and if that's the case, if property is damaged or it needs to be cleaned, we'll provide expenses for that. We'll also pay for mental health services after a shoot. Sometimes you have to deal with the aftermath of a very, very difficult traumatic situation, and we've added this to our plan.
We should say, too, with all of these situations and all of these policies, there are different limits and requirements for each one of these things, so check your policy.
Now, say that your firearm is lost as a result of this incident, we will pay replacement costs of the firearm. Next up, occupational security. So this is one that very few competitors offer that we've been able to find, right, Mark?
Yeah, this is an important one for people who work maybe as security guards or police officers. Yes, we cover that. It's a sort of secondary coverage. If you have coverage, first, say the police department covers you, your employer covers you, fine, we're secondary to that. But if you don't have any coverage and we're secondary to that, we certainly will jump in and take care of it and represent people. So we do not, as a wholesale matter, completely exclude the on-duty person who gets into the self-defense shoot.
That's right. And then all additional court costs, legal fees, we're going to cover all of that all the way through trial, all the way through as many trials as there need to be until we have a verdict. Then with regards to ordinary self-defense incidents, we absolutely cover these types of incidents. Now, we're not exactly sure what our competitors' positions are on this, right? We've interpreted their contracts, and bottom line there is you're just going to have to read them to see if they offer ordinary self-defense, but rest assured, we do.
Yeah, I think it's a big point because lots of gun owners think that anytime they get in a self-defense incident, it's always going to involve their firearm. Maybe, but maybe not, right? You may get in a situation where you are not facing an imminent risk of death or serious physical injury. Maybe it's just an ordinary physical injury. You still have the right to self-defense, but not all of these companies will cover you. Some only cover firearms. We cover all other weapons, even if there's no weapon involved. If you're charged with a felony and it arises out of something that occurred after you signed up and you say, you know what, you reasonably and in good faith claimed, I acted in self-defense, you're covered.
Now, these self-defense matters are tricky business. They're very hard work, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the courtroom and out of the courtroom. And we as self-defense lawyers have a lot of tools in our toolbox to accomplish our clients' goals. And a lot of times those tools can be extremely expensive. Well, guess what? They're all paid for by the Attorneys on Retainer program. All right, that about wraps it up. So today we've done the full breakdown for you, and you can find this handy-dandy matrix chart for comparisons of our product versus all the other products that we've talked about today. We believe that we've made the absolute best product on the market, and we're going to continue to listen to all of you guys. If you have more suggestions, more feedback for us, please leave it in the comments. In fact, that's why we were able to make our product so great, is because we listen to you guys. So go check out attorneysonretainer.us. You can also go to attorneysforfreedom.com. Click on the big old red Attorneys on Retainer button at the top to get started. Any last thoughts today, Mark?
If you have any questions about the Attorneys on Retainer program, just reach out. Call the firm. We're happy to answer any of your questions.
Like, subscribe to this video, leave a comment down below. It's because of your comments that we've created the program the way that we did. So keep leaving comments, and as long as they're civil and respectful, you'll get a response from us. Thanks a lot, guys. Until next time, this has been Attorney Andy Marcantel and Attorney Marc J. Victor. Peace.